What's up everybody, this is CryptoCheck here, my very first YouTube video. Thanks for tuning in, really appreciate it. Today I'm going to teach you guys a bit about support and resistance, how to find them in charts, how to trade them, some examples of my trades in the past that I've had, as well as kind of what invalidates them as a trade. For example, double bounces on these lines. So let's go ahead and get started. So what exactly are support and resistance lines? So a support line is something where we'd expect the price to kind of stop when it's coming down from peaking very high. So it starts to trend downwards from a peak. Where exactly is the price going to stop? It's going to be at a support line. A resistance line is going to be the exact opposite. So we're coming from a bottom, going upwards. Where are we going to stop? Right at a resistance. So how do we determine what these levels are? Well, we kind of look at the past performance of a chart. So let's just start all the way from the left over here. This, we can see that the price started going upwards and upwards and upwards, and it stopped at this exact level. Okay, so let's go ahead and take an arrow and just kind of mark that it stops at this exact level. Now this might be a little bit obvious, but just bear with me here. We're going to try and find all the resistance points through the chart. So this is moving downwards, and as it turns up and up and up again, how do we know when it's going to stop? Well, it ends up stopping right there. That's going to be another resistance point. This is just downwards, and same exact thing. We go up, 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 and out of nowhere the price stops here and goes down pretty hard. Another resistance point. Now you can do this on any sort of scale. For example, maybe you'd call this a resistance. This has started to go downwards, and maybe it comes back up here, and maybe you could call this a resistance now, and this can continue on and on and on. I like to kind of look for the most obvious ones. For example, these first three, they're very clear when you first open the chart. They're not like in the middle like this little portion would be and like this one was. So this kind of, it had a higher point before it. Very recently right here it was already higher. These are like the peak points of this portion of the graph. There's really no point that anything is higher than them besides each other. So we're going to just backtrack a little bit and kind of delete these extra ones for now. Just going through, and we're going to pinpoint the major ones here. So this is mostly, trending downwards. We're still basically trending downwards here, downwards, downwards, downwards. For the most part, this is all just going downwards. Finally, it starts to move up again. This would be a pretty significant one. We get all the way up here, and it backtracks a decent amount. Same thing coming up here. This is a little bit choppy. I wouldn't say there's exactly one spot where, it hits a point and drops a significant amount like this one does. So maybe I'd consider this, maybe I wouldn't. Depends kind of how granular you're getting with things. Finally, though, this one should be very clear. We get all the way up here. No point up until back here was higher than it, which was, 2 months earlier. This is clearly a resistance point. We start to trend downwards here, and as we come back up, this one, I think I would consider this mostly because of the fall we have afterwards. We come up to this point, well, why does it stop? It's probably a resistance point, and we fall back down pretty significantly afterwards, so we're going to mark that one as well. Continuing on here from this bottom, this is mostly just up, 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 until we get to right here. Significant fallback after the highest point we've seen on this entire chart in general, and then we continue downwards and back up to an even higher point. After that, we go back in. This I would consider again sort of like this situation where this is a bit of a spike in the middle of a downtrend here. Same thing here, it goes up to this point, and then out of nowhere it drops significantly. And the last one we have, go up here. That should be very clear based on all the other examples. So now we can kind of look at all these arrows we've drawn and say, hey, are any of them kind of at the exact same price level? And to do that, I'm going to use a horizontal ray when I do find it. So you can see that this one, they're kind of in the same range. A little bit apart, but close enough. What I would do is go ahead and throw a horizontal ray on that. And I like to keep them blue, so I'm just going to apply a blue template. Let's see if any of the other ones match up as well. So you see this arrow and this price when I hold my cursor over it, they're pretty close to each other. So I would, again, consider this a pretty strong resistance point here. And you can see that it really captures the top of that and nearly the top of this. And the final one that I see are kind of these two arrows. They're close together, so you know, it could go either way. But it's something that I'll definitely draw a line on just to keep an eye on. Again, this is relatively close to here. This comes back up pretty close to where we had this before and then drops downwards. So that's the basics of finding some of the resistance lines in this chart. And what I mean by that is we're going upwards, price gets stopped at a certain level, bounces back down afterwards. This blue line has done a pretty good job, this blue line and this blue line. As we come up to here, we fall back, same here. Here we finally break through it, but when we come back to this blue line again, we fall down again. And even this move is relatively captured by this blue line. We do spike above it a little bit, but come back down afterwards. Now we're going to do the exact same thing with the support. So starting back here, we're in a downtrend, price keeps moving down, down, down. Eventually it stops here and spikes back upwards. Let's go ahead and change the color of that. And that'll be our first support line. Again, price goes up, starts to come back down, stops right in here, and before it goes back up significant amount. It's exactly the same as how we were doing resistance lines, just the opposite. So with resistance, price is going up. Where does it stop after a significant amount upwards? Right there. Where does it stop after a significant amount downwards? Right there. So resistance, support, resistance, support, resistance. Now we come back down, support it right there. Same thing here. This is almost captured by this blue line we drew, even though we didn't have an arrow here at the end of drawing our simple blue arrows. It does actually capture this move pretty nicely, which when looking back at it to find a trade will be good to see another kind of data point really close to this blue line. It gives us a reason as like, why did it go up to here and fall back down afterwards? Well, there's a resistance line pretty close by to that, just, you know, a percentage away. Continuing onwards here, we have a pretty nice fall to right here before we get a decent move upwards. We'll consider that another support of ours. Another continuing onwards right there, the next very clear one before we move upwards again. And then here it starts to get a little bit choppy. No significant moves, just slowly trending downwards. Finally, all the way down here, we have a significant bottom to which we pull off of. And then we start to trend slowly downwards again before another significant bottom right in there. After that, we're slowly trending upwards. You could call this a support if you wanted to. And as a matter of fact, we'll just throw an arrow in there. Does hit resistance, comes down, bounces off a support, and then slowly starts to trend upwards again until we get to this resistance area of this blue line where it taps it multiple times and comes back down into here. First time we try to go downwards, this is going to be supporting our price. Comes back down again into here. Another significant bottom before clearly going upwards. So why did it stop here? Well, we probably hit a level of support that's significant. After that, it's a huge move upwards to this support we had initially determined. Come back down. Sorry, this resistance we had initially determined. Come back down to create support. Up to resistance. Down to support. I think you can see the pattern going on at this point. Up to resistance, down to support. So in all, we're almost taking the chart and looking at it as if it's a bounce between resistance and support lines over and over again. So now let's do the same thing as we did with the resistance lines and kind of find where similar areas are and see if we can make anything of them. So I mostly just hover my mouse over these points as I find them. For example, this one, I'm going to put my mouse here, see if any arrows end up being really close to this one just looking to the right, and this one's not, nothing really. If we would have had identified this little peak right here as a resistance, which it definitely could have been, it's a pretty significant move upwards, comes back down right after. That happens to line up very close with this arrow, which again will be very helpful in building evidence for a trade, but we'll continue onwards for now since we didn't initially call that one out. So just keeping scrolling here, finally we get to this green arrow at a very similar price level to this, as you can see. So we do have a pretty strong support level here, so we'll go ahead and draw another blue line right there. We'll continue onwards and do this with each of the arrows. So from here, not really seeing any other green arrows line up with this. From this one, if you look all the way to the right, you can see that this green arrow and this green arrow almost have the exact same price level. We'll draw a line there and it'll become very clear. Move on to this one, not really seeing anything match up with it. Go ahead and move forward. Move on to this one, and this arrow, pretty close in price levels. We'll go ahead and draw another line there. You can see it definitely supported the price right there. Come all the way down to here. This arrow, very clearly almost the same price level. Price got supported here, moved upwards, came back down, was supported by the same exact spot. Over here, nothing really maps up with this arrow. We've already used this one and this one. Nothing significant with this arrow here. We've used this one and we've used this one. So after a general quick search, this is the kind of thing that my chart would look like. I wouldn't necessarily look at the entire price history and draw out all of these lines, mostly because I'm looking for a trade that's close to where the price is now. So I'm mostly looking for an initial scan, support and resistance lines that are close to my price right here, maybe give it like this much room, kind of search for anything that would be good. And so for the most part, I would only have those two blue lines drawn on my chart. Maybe this third one down here would be a good one to add in as well, because this is the zone I'm really searching for a trade at the moment. Something all the way down here, which is, let's see, which is more than a 15% drop, almost a 20% drop. Likely not going to see a price that fall that much before looking at this chart again. So I'd hold off on drawing those lines down there. So all in all, the most valuable lines to you are the ones that are used as support or resistance multiple times as we were drawn, but also the ones that are used as both support and resistance. For example, if you look at this line down here, we drew this off of this support zone, lined up with this support zone, and we have this resistance arrow that creates this line right here. This is going to be a super strong price level no matter which way you're coming from it. I'm going to go ahead and highlight this line just so we can see it as an example here. It's going to be in bright pink. If I were to look at this chart in a couple days, however long it takes for the price to get all the way back down into this region, if it ever does, and if the price starts to come like this and it keeps trending downwards and downwards and downwards, there's a pretty strong chance that on this line that's been used as support, resistance, support again, that we're going to have a bounce off of this line. It's probably going to be used as support again because this price level is so respected. Had you even been looking at this line as a hindsight from this point in time, let's say we had charted it from here, we had all these supports and resistances, we see that this was used as support, price broke below it, came up, used as resistance. In hindsight, if you're scrolling through and you see the chart like this coming down, this would not be a bad place. Of course, now we know that it bounces there, but this would be a place that I start to look to enter a trade. And as you can see, had we used that here, we would have caught this before the massive move upwards here of 65% to the peak. Now, will the same exact thing happen when we come down and touch it again? If we ever do, maybe, or it might not, but probabilities are in our favor that these support and resistance lines do tend to repeat each other over and over. Thank you guys so much for tuning into my first YouTube video here. Hopefully you learned a little bit about support and resistance lines, how to find them, kind of ways to trade them. This video is running a little bit longer than expected already, so we're going to go ahead and get into more details on how to trade them, what invalidates them, and how to look for the best trade examples off of these support and resistance lines in the next video. Please click the like button, leave a comment, share this with your friends. This channel is brand new and it needs your support in getting it out to people. Thanks again and good luck trading support and resistance lines.